Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you are in the world. Welcome to RCI Mondays, and it's time for another single car championship, and this time with the Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo Evo 2. Tonight, we are bringing you round 3 from the Brickyard, also known as Indianapolis, located in Indiana, home of the Indy 500, the Verizon 200, and formerly the USA Grand Prix. 4.17 kilometers in length with 14 turns. I'm your lead commentator for tonight, John Dalton. Alongside me is Callum Kerwin, with Ryan Gill behind the cameras, and of course, next door to us, as always, the live stewards. Welcome, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, John. Thankfully, a lot more starters this time out than that famous Indy Grand Prix that obviously went so poorly. I think we've got currently, last time I checked, 25 people on the grid currently in the session. But it looks interesting, quite bumpy. It seems to be the main concern of most of the people talking in the Discord about setup at the minute, struggling with the bumps, especially in the middle to last sector coming onto the banking. Causes quite a few problems with unsettling the cars.
Yeah, a lot of the drivers comparing this to kind of like a trophy truck with the amount of bumping that it does suffer around Indy. Typically, very old school circuit, lots of grass, not a lot of extra tarmac, some big curbs and some big bumps, as you said, Callum, upsetting the cars as they come onto the banking. 33 drivers competing for split 1 after pre-qualifying withdrawn. Obviously, some sign-outs as always. Unfortunately, real life does take over, but we do have some very regular names here tonight, including Christopher Straper, Asia Masters champion, RPMS regulars Richard Phillips and Matt Stevens, Vency Rachinov, British Masters Championship, and Tom Shipston, silver champion from the British Masters as well, and among many, many others in the RCI racing leagues. 33 drivers, and Tim Ireland, our league admin, very generous with the points, which means the top 30 get a scoring tonight. So even if you finish the race, chances are you are going to score some kind of minute points.
Yeah, it really helps getting a few points here and there at the end of the championship, especially if you're battling in the midfield. It's usually these things are settled by minimal amounts of points, so quite nice of Tim to be so generous with the point spread as we see the cars about to head out for qualifying now. As I say, we cut on to Chris Downing currently out on his out laps. First in the queue to start a lap, just going onto the banking and braking into that very, very sharp 90-degree right-hander. I've never actually driven this track on this game. I only just bought the DLC a few days ago, so I don't know how it drives personally, but I have driven it in other sim racing games. I believe it was in Project Cars 2 for a while. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think it was in Project Cars. Obviously a lot of oval content, IndyCar content in there as well. But Chris Downing is the first driver in the queue, as you said, Callum, tonight on qualifying. Just under 13 minutes to go now. Big long run down into turn 1. Hard on the brakes, flicking it right. Be very careful of that inside curve. Big amounts of understeer as he tips the car in. Pirelli's not quite up to their operating temperature and pressures now. The long sweeper of turn 3 before slightly straightening out the car into turn 4. As you can see our onboard camera there, the amount of movement in the car. Chris's steering wheel being very kind of calm and positive now, flat out into what is kind of like the infield. Of course, the current GT layout does skip through the faster chicane, which then fires you out of the exit. I believe this is turn 6, possibly. We've got 4, 5, 7. This will be turn 7. Run it all the way to the grass on the left-hand side. No track limits, of course. There you can use right up to the grass and maybe even a little bit more if you're brave enough. Now, again, a big stopping distance down into what is turn 8. Again, sharp left, and then we switch it back for the right of 9. Be very careful on the curbs, being careful to take a bit more grass on the inside than you dare do. And now we go through 10 and into 11, where we bring the run out onto the banking, and you've got to get a crucial exit out of here, otherwise you could find yourself with a rival making a move on you down into yet another heavy braking zone for another 90-degree right-hander. This is, of course, turn 12, tipping it around now, and then into 13. We've got pit exit on the right-hand side, or pit entry, sorry, on the right-hand side there. Being very careful not to use that one because no stops tonight, as we know. Refueling banned in tonight's 50-minute race, so we should see no drivers in theory coming down pit road. And Chris Downing for the Volpus Simport car, first across the line with a 1:38.6, a very commendable time, especially on a green track as well, Callum.
Yeah, obviously that green track status just means the track is going to get faster and faster and faster throughout the session as it just literally switches over to fast now as Chris just completes his lap. But it means that as the tyres come in, as we know they come in slowly on these cars, it's just going to make it even more important that you're out at the end of the session getting your laps in and that you've just fuel for qualifying perfectly as well. You don't want to over fuel and have a load of waste fuel in the car that's just going to be slowing you down. You don't want to obviously under fuel and miss those last couple of minutes where people are going to be setting the quickest times.
Yeah, timing is going to be absolutely crucial here tonight, Callum, as this man here, Christoph Verstappen, last time out of Monza, we saw a battering of a turn 1 for Christoph, putting him well down the order, but did manage to fight back to P3 overall, and Jose Jimenez did drive a commanding race and basically just drove away from the field, very unfazed. Venti Rationov, of course, took P2, some 8.6 seconds down the road, and standings are currently super close, but we will find out more about that after the qualifying. Before we start the race, Christoph Verstappen takes himself up into P4 with a 1:38.667, and like you say, Callum, times are only going to get faster, and we saw how close it was last time at Monza in qualifying. And looking at the standings, we got the top 10 within a second, and we did see at least the top 18, I believe, at Monza, all within a second. So of course, with the big main straight, slipstreaming could play into their hands.
Yeah, we thought so at Monza as well. I was surprised we didn't see any more slipstreaming last weekend, but it baffled me a bit. Maybe they don't bother. Maybe these guys aren't too fussed about it, or you'd think there's a couple of teammates in there. You've got the RPMS boys as well. You'd expect them to be heading out together, as I believe they might be. But you'd expect them to do some form of slipstream as we see Jimenez coming through the final corner to set a second lap time, only 2 tenths off last time. Let's see what he comes over the line as now. And goes pole by a tenth and a half, 1:37.995, so the first dip into the 37s.
Yeah, first dip into the 37s, and I think we're going to see a few more drivers in there at least. Venti Rationov looking very strong in practice. Nico Kumpu finding himself up in P3 provisionally at the moment. A driver who's had a little bit of a rotten start to the Super Trofeo Cup, should we say. Nico usually at the head of the field, especially in the German Masters Series. He was, very competitive, British Masters, Asia Masters, all of the Masters basically. So a very flexible driver, does have a very wide skill set. So certainly expect to see him up that a little bit higher, but Jose Jimenez of course is going to be setting to improve on that lap if he can. And Pedro Marquez, another driver for Sims and Riggs, Portuguese driver, the number 182, again a typical fast driver. We do see him qualify quite well, but the race doesn't always go to plan as he jumps over the massive inside curb in turn 12 before feeding it gently through turn 13. Very weird corner, turn 13. The apex isn't kind of where you think it's going to be. You kind of pitch it in and think I've missed it, and then you think no, wait a minute, I've hit it, and then power yourself out onto the banking as Pedro Marquez comes to the line, puts himself up into P12 with a 1:38.790. Of course, much more improvement to find there. Track is of course still fast, very warm conditions tonight, 26 degrees on air and 30 on track, so we might see a little bit of tyre strategy coming into play. Drivers maybe taking it a little bit easier on the opening laps and then really drilling in when the car starts getting lighter towards the end of the race, those faster laps. We saw last week, I believe, possibly Lopez Garcia, correct me if I'm wrong here, Callum, stole the fastest lap on the very last lap of the race away from Jose Jimenez, which did net him a couple of points.
Yeah, it was indeed Lopez Garcia. I'm still not 100% sure how we managed to do that. Not going to lie, on the last lap of a 50-minute race on the same set of tyres that everyone else had been on. I don't know what the gap between the two other fastest laps were, but he can't have beat it by much. I don't know if we know that off the top of our heads, but it'd be interesting for Verstappen coming across the line again, currently 4 tenths off. It goes up to third place, a couple of tenths still to find from. We did note in sort of the pre-warm-up as we were watching before we came live that he did seem like he was struggling a little bit here. It doesn't seem like it's his favourite track. I don't know, maybe if last week has knocked his confidence a little bit, he doesn't want to get involved in any turn 1 instance here. But there is a lot of runoff down at turn 1, so hopefully he can avoid any problems this week.
Yeah, fingers crossed for Christoph Verstappen as Chris Downing now finds himself up into P4 with a 1:38.192. And looking to the top of the board, Jose Jimenez has done a 1:37.995, and Venci Rachinov has set the exact same time. And of course, because Jose set his first, Rachinov with a small improvement there, to the top of the board. Jose Jimenez now rounding through the final corner, looking very good in the first couple of sectors. Track getting ever faster. Jimenez to the line, a 1:37.820, jumps himself up to provisional pole, just ahead of Venci Rachinov, and now the teammate Carlos Frau of the XBD Emerald Racing. We've got a pink, we've got a green, and last week we did have a gold car. Carlos Frau now to P3, some 0.320 seconds off his teammate, but of course we all know teammates can be the kind of rear gunner essentially in the race. If Carlos Frau gets a great start, launches ahead of Rachinov, he can almost defend Jimenez from any impending attacks, can almost hold up the field and be that cork in the bottle that we do see in pack racing as Ethan Scotty now comes towards turn 12 onto the banking, avoiding the inside curb, switching it back to the right before flinging it back to the left again, being very cautious not to take too much curb. You saw how much that upset the car, just a little kiss of the curb and he had to dab on some opposite lock, looking like a kind of very Benetton-esque colour scheme. All it needs is a bit of red and yellow thrown in there for good measure. Ethan Scotty to the line, small improvement, P7 with a 1:38.250.
So close between that top eight, less than half a second. And you're talking these small improvements of sort of 2 or 3 or 4 hundredths can jump you up a position or two. So it's really important these guys, that end of the lap is really important. Obviously you've got the most to lose and also the most to gain at the same time. But not to ruin it, not to run out wide. And we've seen a couple of drivers actually in practice as well tap the wall, as we see Luke Cross for RXM going through one of the turns in the infield. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head because I've got the wrong tab open in Discord. But yeah, it's so vital not to tap that outside wall. Obviously that can ruin any lap you do instantaneously, especially right at the end, as we see him round out onto the banking and coming down to that heavy 90-degree right-hander. Really tight in this game. I haven't seen it, as I said, I haven't seen it before. Yeah, as he runs wide onto the grass, that's going to hurt his time there. I think that might be the lap gone.
Yeah, possibly being told on our ear by Ryan Gill. In valid lap now for Luke Croft, so he's going to have to go round again. Still just under 4 minutes to go, 3 minutes and 40 seconds, so more than enough time for another 2 laps. And now we see an RCI staff member, Tom Roberts, back from his move in Germany. Rig all finally set up in his homeland of Wales, and let's see what he can do tonight. Currently down in P25, was complaining to me earlier how to drive a GT car. I think Tom's only been driving nothing but LMP2s for the last couple of weeks, so adjusting himself back until he got P2 in Daytona. I'm being told in my ear on the obviously Flexstream VCO esports kind of stuff. Not Flexstream VCO. I'm being iRacing Daytona 24, but it was streamed by VCO, I believe, on their channels. So I'm semi-right there. So I'm being shouted at by Ryan Gill. Apologies on that one. John O'Racer in the 699, another regular here at RCI. We see Matthias Thornberg there moving out of the way. I believe this is coming onto the banking last turn as we flick back to Luke Cross now, attacking through the middle sector, turns 9, 10 and into 11. You can use a lot of the inside curb. Looking at his deltas from the lap so far, he's looking very good for an improvement, being told half a second at the moment in my ear as he rounds now to turn 12. Currently resides in P12, so he's got to have a cleaner run through than he did last time, and he does. Keeps it well off the grass, now tips it in to turn 13. Want to try and maximize an early power there to try and get the best run that you can through 14. You want to be flat through 14, you don't want to be lifting at all, and it seems like these Super Trofeo cars love to drag themselves to the outside wall. Luke Cross now across the line, P3, great lap there, 1:38.122, although still 1 minute 50-ish to go. Anybody can improve from now on, as we know the last lap is going to be the fastest lap here, Callum.
Yeah, that track state is still showing as fast. Don't know if we'll have enough time for it to get to optimum before the end of the session. If it does, I imagine it's going to be right on the final lap as we see Verstappen coming down the back straight in towards turn 7. It seems like a lot of these drivers struggling with turn 12, especially on the exit though, running wide onto the grass. We've seen that 4 or 5 times now as we see Romaniuk, who usually qualifies quite well down in P10, 6 tenths off coming into that turn I mentioned earlier, nearly clipping that inside curve. It's just about the right amount. You don't want to hit it too hard and then settle the car because it will push it out wide onto the grass. Good amount of inside curb through 13 as he rounds out flat now towards the end of the lap, trying to push towards the line. Staying clear of the wall, 3 tenths I'm told by Ryan Gill is his current margin, so that should put him up in the top 4. Very close there between him and Carlos Frau in 5th place.
Yeah, super close at the top of the board. We've got Jose Jimenez and Rachinov basically on the near enough the same lap time. And then we've got everybody kind of 0.3 all the way down to about a second in P16 is where that goes between us. We see another driver jump up and improve there. Not sure who it was, but we now watch Andy Boardman in the 69 Greased Weasel racing car as he rounds through turn 13, flies himself towards turn 14 again, tucking it on the inside and then kind of opening the steering up towards the outside wall. You want to get as close as you can to the outside wall without kissing it, like you said earlier, Callum. And Andy Boardman, great improvement up into P3, beats Luke Crofts with a 1:38.025. Andy Boardman has definitely found a little bit of pace in this car somewhere from the first couple of races where we did see him just down in the kind of top 10 bottom end. Of course, as the clock now hits 0, Andy Boardman does have another attempt at this if he does want to. Jimenez with a slight improvement over Rachinov, now 0.080 to the good. And this man here, Christoph Verstreper, someone that we thought would be a lot higher up, and we did say earlier, Callum, that he was fairly down in the practice, looking through turn, I believe this will be a 10 into 11 that brings you out onto the banking before the hard braking zone of 12. He's got an RPMS car ahead of him, hopefully is not going to hinder coming into 12. It looks like he's getting very close. Hopefully the RPMS car can give a good run through 13 and 14 and just give Christoph enough just to pull him across the line and give him that extra little bit of toe. Looking at his deltas, they're looking fairly even so far, so it's all going to hinge on a good run out of 14, and he kisses the wall. Unfortunately, not going to be an improvement for Christoph, so P7 is where Christoph starts, and fingers crossed this man can find his way through the field. But now Venti Rachinov, one of the last drivers to run a lap, looking fairly equal on his deltas, although he doesn't actually need that much to improve, comes to the line and cements himself into P2. So an uber competitive qualifying once again. The top 16, 1-6, covered by less than a second, Callum.
Yeah, another set of 15 plus cars all covered by a second in qualifying. We had that in Monza as well. I think Verstappen just got that last sector a little bit wrong. He sort of touched that inside curb going into 12, and you could see it sort of unsettle the car, and they had to sort of sort it out before it came into 13. You could see the rear end wasn't quite happy with it, and obviously touching that wall on the outside, probably trying to put the power down as early as possible. He knew that was going to be the last lap he'd get, so he's probably tried to put it down a couple of maybe 10, 20 meters earlier, and it's just cost him that little bit on the exit.
Yeah, I want to be keeping it out of the wall in the race if you can. Of course, 50 minutes here tonight that we have to run through. And as you see, flash up on your screen now, the qualifying results. So Jose Jimenez, again, takes a pole position. Venti Rachinov in P2. Andy Boardman takes P3. Luke Crofts, P4. Adam Romaniuk, big improvement there, P5. Carlos Frau in 6th. Christoph Verstreper in 7th. Chris Downing, 8th. Nico Kumpu slides down to 9th. Ethan Scotty on 10th. Jordan Daly 11th, Matt Stevens and Richard Phillips, teammates in 12th and 13th, Matthew Kingston Lee in 14th, Marquez 15th, Lopez Garcia 16th, Roscam 17th, Shipston 18th, Les Stevenson back from the pub tonight is racing in split 1 in 19th, John Aracer in 20th, Daniel Crinzen 21st, Matthias Tornberg 22nd, Martinez 23rd, Facuccio 24th, our very own Tom Roberts in 25th, and Cal in 26th. Rounds out your 26 drivers for tonight of the 33 that have signed up.
Yeah, and looking at those split times there, it seemed like a lot of people losing a lot of time in sector 1 to the top 2 guys. The top 2 obviously very close through all 3 sectors, but especially looking at Verstappen and Downing, they seem to be losing it all in sector 1. So maybe that's the breaking point at the end of the straight, probably the biggest opportunity to gain time, or maybe going through sort of the turn 4 sort of complex of corners, maybe just the other drivers maximising that a little bit more by about 3 tenths though.
Yeah, India is one of those circuits that kind of aids itself to having a flow. As soon as you get one of the previous corners wrong, it then kind of offsets you for the next couple of corners. As we now round into our championship standings with Christoph Verstreper, who is down in P7th, currently leading our championship with 72 points. Jose Jimenez with 69. Vency Rachinov with, if Ryan Gill could stop tabbing out of Windows, 58. Adam Romaniuk with 53. Carlos Frau with 48. Joint with Pedro Marquez, who also has 48. We then have Benjamin Schumann, who's not with us tonight, with 40. Andy Boardman with 37, looking to take a good haul of points away with that good qualifying result. Ethan Scotty with 34. And Chris Downing for the Volpers Simsport rounds out your top 10 with 31. Now, moving on to page 2, Tom Shipston, no slouch to a championship race. Of course, silver British Masters champion with 31 points. Ashley Holland and Jordan Daly tied on 28. We then have Roskam and Matthew Kingston-Lee tied again on 25. We then have Les Stevenson on 23. Carlos Calatayud. It's probably butchered. 2021. It's better than Circuit to Catalunya. But John Eraser then on 19. Matthias Thornberg on 17, joint with Matt Stevens, who is also on 17 points.
Yeah, you're a brave man for going for that.
I should have gone with Circuit to Catalunya again.
Should have gone for Circuit.
Richard Phillips and Bailey Collins tied on 13. Daniel Martinez on 12. We then have Pablo Lopez Garcia and Marco Facuscio on 11. Daniel Crinson on 10. Nico Kumpu on 9. Luke Crofts on 8. And then anybody below Luke Crofts is yet to score on 0.
Very.
Good reminder from Ryan Gill. Drop round, of course, is an RCI kind of feature, and this is, of course, just showing the best results so far. So some drivers that look a little bit better than others might be in for a bit of a shock when the drop rounds do kick in later on in the season, once we have rounded up all of the rounds of the Super Trofeo Cup. And, of course, we do find ourselves in round 4, crossing the Atlantic for Brands Hatch for round 4, before finally round 5 takes us back to Europe for the finale at Spa. So all still to play for up and down the grid. Everybody super close, Callum, and every point is going to matter in this championship, I feel.
Yeah, I am really looking forward to 30-ish Super Trofeos trying to hurtle around Brands Hatch. It's a very tight track. I think we might see a bit more like Monza with some shoulder barging here and there, especially going into the hairpin at Druids. You've got the tight left-hander at the bottom of the hill. I think Brands is going to be a great race. Not to say anything that Daytona won't be. I'm sure we'll be treated to another one tonight as well. But I am looking forward to Brands.
Daytona on the brain, I think, Callum. We are here at Indianapolis tonight.
Unfortunately, circle. Sorry.
Although Daytona is, of course, next weekend, the Daytona 24. For those of you interested in IRL racing, does kick off next week, of course, with the new GTD categories and the GTP cars, of course, all in a new format. So super exciting stuff happening in real life, and super exciting stuff happening tonight. With Jose Jimenez taking the pole position once again. Going to see if he can have a copy and paste of Monza. Hopefully turn 1 isn't going to be like Monza, and fingers crossed we can get all drivers through the typical pinch point of Indianapolis a lot safer. Hopefully stewards are going to be keeping an eagle eye over proceedings tonight. We of course have a good team tonight of Andreas, Bart, Connor, Daniel, Jake Boswell and Tom Watts in the box, each driver being assigned their own kind of sector to watch. So behave, everybody, tonight, because stewards are no slouch to giving out penalties, as we saw last week at Monza. And of course, with no pit stop tonight, a quick refresh of those of you that this might be your first round, possibly. But of course, 50 minutes, that's 5-0, you see at the top of your screen there. 50-minute race, a ban on pit lane refueling, which of course will mean drivers will have to make sure they're putting enough in the tank to begin with. And anyone forced to come in, of course, will be at a significant disadvantage. Being told by Ryan Gill we can still repair damage tonight, so if turn 1 is that bad that you do have to come in, of course, you're more than welcome to, although no fuel will be added to your car, and of course you're going to be at a very big disadvantage for those that don't have to pit, because Indianapolis is one long pit lane.
Yeah, it's just RCI trying to do that a little bit to help save the planet, only using the fuel we have to. Yeah, very, very, very big long pit lane at Indy. It's going to be a massive pain for those guys who do pit, especially with coming off that bank at quite some speed. You're going to lose so much time in the box, as we see Daly coming around on the formation lap. Or again, nearly another formation lap incident. I believe he had one last time at Monza that caused some ghosting, as the cars start to look about going 2x2 through this final set. It's quite a tight, as we say, quite a tight turn 12. So it'll be interesting to see if they do go 2x2 through there quite easily. I think they are going to manage it, as we see Jimenez starting to get ready to set the pace off the line. I think, yeah, being on the inside won't cause too many problems coming off that final corner. I imagine he's going to hold it as long as he can before the green flag, just to give Rachinov that minimum amount of chance down into turn 1. Quite a long run.
Yeah, quite a long run indeed, and we did see Jimenez napping that a little bit at Monza, which did allow him to be overtaken down into turn 1, so hopefully Jose is going to be staring at those green lights, waiting for them to appear, as we now round out onto the oval 2x2, of course running the reverse direction to what you would in NASCAR. Of course, a right turn ahead of you there, as Jose Jimenez right to the pit wall there, giving nobody the inside line, as we now go green. Off we go down into turn 1, drivers 2 wide, 3 wide sometimes in the background. Andy Boardman covering off Romaniuk into turn 1, looking very clean at the start of the field. Jose Jimenez takes the lead from Venci Rachinov. Andy Boardman on the outside there, getting a hip and shoulder check from Rachinov, as now Luke Crofts is getting involved as well in the red camouflage Super Trofeo, as we now round into turn 4. Everybody single file, looking at the track map, not seeing any yellow cars on there, and I'm not seeing anybody that's broken away from the train, so I'm going to say it, but I'm going to curse it. Possibly a clean start, Callum.
I believe it was a very well-behaved start. I think, you know, you had a couple of people looking down in there to try and see if they could find a move down the inside. Don't believe anyone's a massive gainer, as the timing screens settle themselves as they usually do with ACC. But Jimenez and Rachinov and Boardman and Cross and Romaniuk all away cleanly. Going off, Rachinov off in the background. Did he outbrake himself there, or was that contact I didn't quite see?
I cursed it, didn't I? I said it was a clean start, and curse of the common strikes once again. Venci Rachinov trying to find a gap in the queue. He decides to pick alongside Ethan Scotty, as we now come to a replay here from the helicam. We're going to see exactly what happens. Jimenez on the brakes, Rachinov on the brakes, but maybe that little bit too late, touched the grass, and ABS of course kicking in, and Luke Crofts even followed. We didn't see that on the TV cam initially, but Luke Crofts off and back on, and then Rachinov takes a lot of lawn mowing. I'm hoping he's going to charge the Indianapolis owners for that one. A lot of grass underneath that Lamborghini, going to have a lot of dirt on those tyres, so going to have to get them scrubbed up for an attack. But Rachinov down into P7. This of course promotes Christopher Straper up 2 places currently for Straper in P5, Carlos Frau in P4, as we see him close to the back of Adam Romaniuk into turn 1. Looking at the back now, we've got a big gaggle of cars. We've got Luke Crofts on the inside there, Ethan Scotty maybe not expecting him to be there, nearly chopping off the nose of that camouflage Lamborghini. Camouflage maybe working a little bit too well there on the number 25.
Yeah, Luke Cross on that number 25 lost out even more than Rachinov did, obviously dropping even more positions. You'd think by only outbreaking himself a little bit, I imagine he got distracted by Rachinov ahead of him, as we see Verstappen putting on the pressure on Carlos Frau in 4th place, really getting underneath on the back straight of that rear wing. Will he go for a move down into turn 7? No, decides to follow through. Not so many passing points here if there are at Monza. You've got on the brakes down into turn 1 or on the brakes down into turn 7. I'm interested to see if anyone tries to do a move into 12, because if you can get that inside line, there's nothing really that the guy on the outside can do about it.
Yeah, if you get a good run out of 11 down into 12 like we're witnessing here with Christopher Straper looking towards the back of Carlos Frau's green XPD Emerald racing car, closes right up on the brakes there. Carlos Frau maybe being a little bit cautious on the opening laps to try and not run too close to the back of Adam Romaniuk ahead for P3, although we've got your kind of top 2, 3, 4 and 5 all kind of bunched together. And looking in the background there, we've got Chris Downing as well coming out on to the oval. We're now going to see the slipstream effect that we were talking about. Christopher Straper behind Carlos Frau, looking like a good amount of gain there, Callum, but maybe just enough to make a move up the inside as we now switch to Helicam for Straper up the inside. Got to get it stopped, Christoph, before the switch back to turn 2. Covers off Carlos Frau beautifully and gets that move done to take to P4.
Yeah, he's managed that perfectly well as we see Rachinov setting the fastest lap down in P7. You know, that moment of the switchback is where you're most vulnerable going through turn 2 and 3 there. And he's just managed to hold the correct line through that just to stop Carlos from making any form of move back to try and take that position as he's rounding off onto the straight now. And he's probably going to be all eyes ahead towards Romaniuk and Boardman as Jimenez again pulling off by 3 seconds already, only in 3 laps.
Yeah, 3 seconds in 3 laps is a great achievement in what is essentially a one-make race. Of course, a few setup changes you can do to differentiate yourself, carry a slightly different fuel load, maybe a few different TC and ABS maps, but of course, much under the skin of these cars, all the same. So equal playing field here as Romaniuk now comes under pressure from Christopher Straper out onto the oval for a brief moment down into 12. Christoph looks, thinks about it, and then tucks back in to try and get a better run through 12, sets himself up for 13, and if he can do a copy and paste on what he just done on Frau, he's going to be through on turn 1. Has Romaniuk seen that happen to Frau in the mirror? Is he going to try and cover off the inside line? Time will tell as they now round through turn 14 towards the start-finish line, jumping in the slipstream. Adam Romaniuk ahead in the 29. Christoph Straper behind in the number 2. Doesn't look like he's close enough this time, Callum. Maybe Carlos Frau's car running a huge amount of wing in comparison, but Romaniuk overcooks turn 1, nearly misses it, nearly over the grass, and has to cut back on suddenly into turn 2. This is of course going to give Christoph that run into turn 3 and 4. Does get a much tighter line through 4 as well into 5 and 6. Could be another passing place if they leave the door open. Big slide from the pole ahead in the 29, but I think he's just about managed to hold on to it through sector 1.
Yeah, he did very, very well to recover that. It's really hard, especially when you're going deep into a corner like turn 1 there to recover that back. As you said, it's all about the flow through that sector. So he's managed to just about hold off Strapen as we switch back down to Phillips, battling with Les Stevenson and Tom Shipston down the back straight. It looks like he might be very well close enough to have a move down into 7 as he cuts to the inside. No. Brakes quite early there, nearly to the point where he's getting overtaken by Shipston going into that corner. Maybe not quite confident enough on the tyres yet. Might have gone for some lower pressures to allow them to warm up later in the race to help with the wear.
Yeah, got to be careful not to outbrake yourself down into turn 8, as we saw earlier with Venti Rachinov overshooting by miles. So very well held there as now Richard Phillips finds himself through turn 12. Both drivers looking at a little bit wide, missing the apex on the inside, although Les Stevenson is keeping it under control just about. There's 2 very different lines there through turn 13 before 14. We saw one car going that little bit wider and the other car going that little bit tighter, as now Verstraper looks to the inside in turn 1. Adam Romaniuk outbroke himself last time, does run that little bit wide. Looks like Verstraper's going to try and do the switchback with that much wider line through 2, although can't get the power down and make it stick enough. And these guys are going to keep battling. This battle is going to go all the way to the end, I feel. We didn't ask each other in the pre-show, Callum, but who is your money on? We completely missed it before the green dropped. We're going to say Jimenez now, probably, because he's like miles ahead.
That's because he's 4 seconds ahead after 4 laps. Is that allowed? Am I allowed to cheat? I mean, Jimenez obviously is going, but if we, as Ryan Gill suggests, if we go for a best of the best, I'm fancying a comeback from Rachinov. I think he's got some pace, and I think he's going to try and make up a few places, especially later on in the race. He looked very quick at Monza, so I reckon Rachinov might cause a surprise as we see Les Stevenson. Is that going down the inside on Crofts there, I believe?
Crofts getting involved, maybe.
Now after that after those first few corner instances, I believe he was ahead off memory. As we see Nev. Oh yes, as Ryan's reminding me, he followed Ration off the track as we see them coming through 12 and then 13 there. Les Stevenson putting a little bit of a gap on Crofts through that last sector. Doesn't look like he'll be under any form of threat going down the main straight. As looking down onto the track map, you can see how far Jimenez is ahead as we see that arrow currently going through turn 2. Verstappen not close enough to force a move on that time, as Romagnoc still goes in a little deep, and a 5-second penalty for Chris Downing. I don't know if we need to have a look at the stewards room, do we, to see if there's any penalties applied, or is that one of ACC's?
No, just had a look over at the stewards room when I saw it pop up. Connor Morgan tonight, our steward, who is going to be reporting what and when and how to us. We have an incident on lap 1, turn 4, involving the 256 and the 23. So Chris Downing and the 256 was Nico Kumpu. The 23 does not leave sufficient space on the inside, causing contact between the two. So 5 seconds handed out to Downing. Of course, we do not have a mandatory stop here tonight, so Downing's 5 seconds will be added on to the back of his races. Romagnoc now messes up through the kind of fluid section that I spoke about earlier, and this allows Christoph Verstappen to get up the inside as they go through turn 11, up onto the banking, into 12. I think Verstappen's got it done even before the braking zone of 12, so now he can firmly fix his sights ahead on Andy Boardman, who is about 1.5 seconds to the good on a last sector time. And I think Romagnoc just picked up a little bit of dirt on the kind of 8, 9, 10 switchback before 11, and it just kind of offset him. I did say earlier in qualifying, Indy is one of those circuits where it's fluid, so if you mess up one corner, you mess up the next 2 or 3 corners, and that of course gave him a bad run up to turn 12, which did allow Christoph Verstappen to go through. And now Carlos Frau is probably going to be eking on the pressure onto Romagnoc to see if he can force him into another mistake.
Yeah, I believe, are we going to have a 3 wide moment going down the main straight? I believe Kingston's going to make it 3 wide. This is going to be interesting as Kingston Lee's sandwiched in the middle in that bright yellow car, and he's managed to get through there. Quite well behaved. I believe Kingston did decide to back out of that one there, as we see Kingston Lee coming through turn 3 and into turn 4. Oh, there was a little bit of a tap there between Kingston and Mattis Thornberg there, I believe. Maybe not, as I'm being told on my ear, being correct. It looked quite close there. But these guys battling down over the 19th, 20th and 21st place. Obviously still quite important with that spread of points. As we see a massive gaggle of cars coming out. A bit of a bomb that was very close there from, I believe, Nico Kumpu.
Yeah, Nico Kumpu.
Marquez there. Very, very lucky not to have made any contact with the right rear tyre of Marquez, and that would have been a spin straight away and probably a penalty for Kumpu if that had materialised into any full contact. But he's lost about a second now from that. It means Marquez can focus ahead on the RCI car of Jonathan Daly, who's had a poor turn 12 and is managing to fend off through turn 13, but he's going to be vulnerable into turn 1, John.
Yeah, I say I proper winced when I saw Nico Kumpu going up the inside into turn 9. It wasn't a very pretty move. I think he just misjudged it a bit on the brakes, but like I say, Jordan Daly there faulting in turn 12, which did allow Marquez to kind of tuck himself up the rear of that Lamborghini and looks into turn 1, decides maybe not close enough to make a lunge here and tucks back into the cube, and Nico Kumpu straight back on the rear end of these guys to make it a little 4-man train. We got Daly at the front, Marquez, and then we got Nico Kumpu and Ethan Scotty kind of lurking at the back, and we saw all of the lurkers at Monza kind of bide their time, and in the end it did kind of, you know, come to fruition when all the guys ahead started battling. The kind of guy that was, you know, 2 seconds down the road behind them all for lap after lap just found his way through, just opened up a door and away they went. So it is one of those races, although 50 minutes doesn't sound like a lot of time, of course you can bide it, as you now see Ethan Scotty there, up to the back of Nico Kumpu towards the outside. Kumpu to the inside, the more favoured line, although the outside does become the inside for the next turn on the switchback. As we look back here, Nico Kumpu is defending Ethan Scotty just about through the switchbacks and goes defensive into 11, and this is going to hamper his run down towards 12. If Ethan Scotty can get a maximising drive off that corner, he does so, closing up the gap a little bit. I think he lifted a tad there because it looked like he was going for the move and then kind of thought better of it, although this does bring in the other XPD car of Lopez Garcia to the back of this train now, as Ethan Scotty to the outside in 13 tries to make it awkward before backing out, getting the kind of switch back again to maximise the run through 14 onto the start finish straight. Scotty looks very wide there in the dirty air, possibly a small lift, and this might allow Lopez Garcia now to tow up to the back of him into turn 1.
Yeah, that was a very, very close look. Clipped a little bit of grass there as we see Lopez Garcia. Is he going to go for a dive into turn 1? Scotty going to leave him enough space. He has left through turn 1, but that obviously becomes the inside of turn 2 with that flowing nature of the circuit, with Garcia trying to do a little bit of switchback. Maybe he can think about now looking onto the brakes into turn 5 and maybe through turn 6 get a good run onto the back straight. All the options here for overtaking at Indy.
Yeah, definitely so. And Stewart's bringing up another incident, lap 3, involving the 256 and the 34. So Ethan Scotty and Nico Kumpu apparently had blows slightly earlier in the race. Small bump on the back, no position gained, so nothing to give out for the Stewards. Although this fight could last for another length of time, like we saw at the front with Verstappen and Romaniuk. We see drivers that are, you know, super good in their first couple of sectors and then tail off in sector 3, or it's the other way round where they're super good in sector 3 but then tail off through sector 1 and 2. So possibly different aero setups maybe coming into play here. Carlos Frau looks to the back of Romaniuk, who runs wide in 12, and this is of course going to hamper the run slightly to 13, although if you mess up 12 you can kind of defend through 13 and make it very awkward for the other car to try and get around you, as Romaniuk now comes out onto the bank in the clean air. Of course, Carlos Frau with the slipstream, and we've got Chris Downing behind, who of course has a 5-second penalty, so he's going to be wanting to get a move on, and getting a move on this man here, Christopher Straper on Andy Boardman, makes it very awkward for turn 1, kind of runs Boardman all the way to the outside of 1, which makes his 2 line very shallow, where he does the switchback and gets a better drive up into 3 side by side. For Straper to the inside, Boardman gives him just about enough room there on the inside, and now of course this is going to become the inside, then Boardman is going to have the inside if he can hang it around the outside here. Verstraper gives him all the room into 6, and of course 7. He could claw on for the inside line as Boardman goes to come off again. Just about enough room given, and what a first sector that was. I've never seen 2 cars go side by side for that long. We have one nearly going sideways, and now Verstappen looks to the inside almost of turn 8 to see if he can get a move stuck, but I think he's going to think twice about putting Andy Boardman under pressure after that excellent display of driving from the both of them.
I was going to say, I think we might see some more side-by-side action on the next lap that you're going to have to commentate on. I just saw it flash up on the screen there. 5 seconds penalty for car 255, which is Carl for causing a collision. So might be another one for you to read out from the stewards, but might need to wait there as Verstappen goes very quick in on the brakes into turn 12. Now it's all about setting up through turn 13 and the bank corner onto turn 14 onto the main straight, trying to get the best run possible and pick up the slipstream. Obviously Boardman not being helped, with Jimenez being probably about 7 seconds up the road now as we turn on to lap number 10. Looks like he's going to be a bit too far back for a move into 1, but maybe he can set something up, I don't know.
Yeah, Jimenez nearly 8 seconds to the good ahead of Boardman, so a big window of opportunity has been built up there for Jimenez, and Verstappen not close enough this time into turn 1 to make it awkward enough for Boardman into 2, and Adam Romaniuk has now outbroke himself. I believe turn 1, Carlos Frau in the background as well is off. Not sure what happened here. We're going to switch to a replay. Carlos Frau ahead of Romaniuk at the moment, coming under pressure from another car behind, possibly would have been Chris Downing, possibly.
Carlos taken Romaniuk. Romaniuk was initially ahead.
So Chris Downing into turn 1, has a move. Romagnoc goes late on the brakes. Downing goes even later, and Carlos Frau is just the poor innocent party. So Stewart's going to be casting their eye over that one. A very ambitious move from Downing, very ambitious defence from Adam Romagnoc, and Carlos Frau, unfortunately, in the XPD racing car, finds himself now all the way down in P13. Downing still in P7, and Adam Romagnoc in P4, providing our live timing is as up to date as possible, and I believe it should be, although Romagnoc with a blank kind of suggests maybe not. Nope, there he goes, crosses the line. Matt Stevens, can we just say, Callum, P5.
P5.
Where?
You know
how?
I don't know. He's had a very quiet race and has suddenly just appeared in P5. Stevens, yeah, just shows about keeping it quiet there, and he's still circulating in P5 for RPMS SimSport. Looks like he's going to go on the attack on Romagnoc maybe into turn 1. Obviously Romagnoc with no slipstream. I'm wondering if we're going to see how long and painful a drive-through is. And yes, as Ryan mentions in my ear, probably damage from that incident, so we have to see how that affects his lap times. But will Stevens go for it? He's thinking about it for a move down the inside, just about judges the brakes perfectly there. He's going to try and show as much of the nose through these corners in this first sector as possible to try and upset Romagnoc off his line. Obviously Rachenov there hanging in the background, the driver that I said I thought would come through from the back, just ready to pick up any pieces if something like that happens again at turn 1.
Yeah, certainly so. Stevens going to be getting fired up now for a move on Romagnoc, of course, would promote himself up into P4. Romagnoc with a little bit of damage, probably on the side of that car, hopefully not to the front or the back. The crucial areas where you really do not want to pick up any kind of contact at all. As we see a couple more stewards reports. Incident lap 3, turn 9, involving the 91 and the 255. 5 seconds for the 255. The 255 causes contact, which unsettles the 91. Judged as avoidable contact, not a take out. And incident on lap 10, turn 7, involving the 2 and the 69. So Verstraper and Andy Boardman, who we saw go kind of, side by side for many corners through sector 1 towards 2. Of course, racing incident, minor contact. So stewards deeming that one fair and square on both parties. I think everyone gave as good as it got in that fight. And Matt Stevens now looks a little bit closer to the back of Adam Romagnoc than he did last time by Venci Rachenov, of course, lurking in the background in the white car, gets very wide over the cross hatchings onto the banking. Possibly had to have a small lift there, going to hamper him a little bit. Chris Downing in the background with the 2 stripes over the car, of course, looking to make any gains he can with the 5-second penalty. He's going to want to pull out a massive window to the guys behind. As you see in the background, everybody running in that tight-knit pack. So if Downing loses 5 seconds overall, he could see himself losing a good amount of places. And Matt Stevens, no move to be had on Adam Romagnoc through sector 1, and still no move to be had as this man here, Christoph Verstraper, on Andy Boardman, still going toe to toe through sector 1. Of course, not side by side like we saw a couple of laps ago, but Christoph is going to be wanting to get a move on to try and get past Andy Boardman as Jose Jimenez just drives up the road. 9.3 seconds to the good last time by. So all the while our clock is ticking down, of course, Jimenez's lead is opening up.
You ignore that lead of nearly 10 seconds by Jimenez, which is insane, by the way, and a split of this level to be 10 seconds clear in 12 laps is a massive feat. This has been a perfect race for Verstappen. Starting down in P7 and still managing to come through and battle up so far into 3rd place, and it does look like he might get the better of Boardman here, or otherwise it's going to be a battle for the next 28 minutes long. But it's a perfect race. It's sort of the opposite of Monza, where he's had to fight from the back again, really. But obviously this time due to a poor qualifying rather than a turn 1 incident, I think he might have in there. Maybe it was a little bit of a lift down onto the straight. Didn't want to run into the back of Boardman, or whether that was a bit of servo rubber banding. But it doesn't look like he'll have a look into turn 1. He's ducking out the slipstream a couple of times, maybe trying to cool brakes.
Maybe trying to get a little bit of clean air into the Lamborghini, although maybe trying to distract Boardman so he looks at his mirror, and then when he looks up he's already driven past his braking marker and onwards he goes. Now into turn, I believe this is 4 off the top of my head, no track map to hand tonight, as we found every single variant of the Indy GP circuit other than the one that we're using here tonight. I even found like a backwards layout. There is no official track map, Ryan Gill's told me in my ear, which makes our life 10 times harder on trying to name corners, but I think we're doing an alright job of it tonight as Christopher Straper now out of Sector 1 onto what is essentially the back straight. Andy Boardman's car looking much better through Sector 1, manages to pull out a little bit of a gap, and I think the Straper's car is much better through kind of 2 and 3 as he closes right up on the brakes, although don't be disillusioned by that one. Carlos Frau still down in P13, his teammate ahead, Lopez Garcia in the other XPD Emerald racing car, of course looking to the back of Ethan Scott, and we see this pack is so tightly knit. I think it's headed up by Marquez, possibly, by looking at those timings. Jordan Daly, sorry, beg your pardon, Jordan Daly. Yeah, definitely ahead of the pack. Kind of, I wouldn't say a cork in the ball because nobody's really close enough to make moves at the moment, but like we said earlier, Chris Downing is losing 5 seconds as it stands. Puts him just ahead of Daly on current split timings if the race was to end right now, although if he does lose kind of another second to Daly, he's going to find himself way down the order, right at the back of this queue, possibly down in P16, I believe, possibly on that one, as we now round out onto the straight again. Les Stevenson very wide there, nearly slapping the wall as he comes on to the start-finish straight. The Stars and Stripes on the left-hand side, hashtag BACC, then projects across that. I've never ever noticed that piece of track scenery before, so great to see some animated surfaces in ACC as well.
Yeah, it's a first for me soon. I thought India only had 4 corners, so I don't know how we're struggling to name all 4. But
we're not turning. We're not turning only left tonight. So yeah, there are some right turns tonight, Callum.
Oh damn it! I bought my NASCAR hat as well. It's a big disappointment. But as we see Verstappen again attacking Boardman. Boardman's placing the car very have It's all he has to do. I think, Jimenez is gone now. He's up the road. Unless something happens to him, which is going to cost him 10 seconds, it's just going to have to be self-inflicted. I don't think he's going to be losing this one anytime soon. Obviously, as I put the commentator's curse on Jimenez, so expect him to blow up instantaneously or get a drive-through penalty for the stewards for, I don't know, being Spanish.
Being told that is, yeah. Sorry, go on, Callum.
Jimenez half a second quicker a lap than anybody else in the field. I don't know what he ate for breakfast this morning, but I definitely want some before I do a league race with RCI.
Yeah, definitely so. And speaking of league races for RCI, of course, our calendar this week comes to us with more steady pacing. Of course, the winter kind of gets us all fired back up, ready for a full season. So tonight, of course, the Super Trofeo Cup. Tomorrow, an empty slot, and Wednesday continues our Rookies Championship Season 3, where we head to round 3, of course, at Brands Hatch, where we find ourselves next week with the Super Trofeos as well. Thursday, with an empty slots, we see Pedro Marquez sizing up Jordan Daly. A little bit of elbows out from Daly, but does manage to filter back into the train, but needs to be careful now. Nico Kumpu in the Lion car isn't going to have a chunk of him, although does manage to tow back up to the rear of Daly. Ethan Scotty possibly on the defence from Lopez Garcia, and that opens the door to Carlos Frau, although Frau all over the place, coming through turn 4 into 5, not being able to capitalise, and Lopez Garcia leaving a little bit too much room there maybe for Ethan Scotty, allows him to drag alongside, but does become the inside line now for the back straight. And of course, big sideways moment there from Garcia, loses a lot of ground, and Ethan Scotty is going to be able to kind of get alongside down into turn 8. His teammate tucking up the rear of him, trying to go on the defence from Les Stevens that is behind, and Luke Crofts, of course, behind him on the comeback drive from missing this very turn that we just passed through there, turn 8. And these boys switching back and forth into 11 we go. Very hard to judge where Ethan Scotty is alongside, and a big sideways moment, a little tap maybe from Carlos Frau, not too sure, unsettled the back of the 23 as everybody shuffling up and down the grid. Chris Downing finds himself with a drive-through, so stewards reports coming through thick and fast, looking over at the channel that we need to read from, so more on that in a minute. But I think the chaos has just about settled down. Lopez Garcia comes out in P10, Ethan Scotty P11, and Carlos Frau, not really a gainer out of that scenario, down in P12. But Thursday did find ourselves with an empty slot. Friday then continues our GT Sprint Challenge Season 9 with round 3 heading to Paul Ricard. Dylan Tan fended off Hugo Merles and Jonathan Seville to take the top step with Jonas Salvalainen, who won round 1 quite dominant fashion at Monza, all the way down in P8. So championship super close on that one. And of course, new sign-ups have begun. Night Owl Season 12 opened with pre-qualifying taking place at Laguna Seca. Season begins on the 11th of February, also at Laguna Seca. So great for getting in some early practice if you're not too confident there. And Thursday's championship Season 12 sign-ups have also opened this week with no pre-qualifying. So if you haven't got a lot of time in your hands, you want a quick fire league, jump on over to the Thursday sign-up. We're leaving it up to the drivers to choose their initial skill bracket. Of course, could be adjusted depending on performance of round one. And Thursdays will follow a mock British GT format, with each round taking place in Britain and the finale being taken to Spa. So multi-class racing, GT3s, GT4s, of course GT4s with a slight update from Kunos in the last couple of patches. So if you're wanting to dabble your hand in them, that is the perfect championship for you.
I'm going to break out the sim and bully John into driving some lovely V12 Astons, so if you want to see that. Unfortunately, currently not scheduled to be live streamed. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to yet.
Mondays and Fridays this season only at the moment.
Unfortunately, not enough broadcast team available on Thursdays, but that means we do get to drive some lovely V12 Astons around some great British racing circuits. As we see Carlos Frau coming down the back straight now, I believe he's looking to try and make a move on Crofts, who is still struggling after that start. I'm wondering if there was a bit of damage there, quite deep on the brakes, nearly hitting the back of Les Stevenson going through turn one, as Carlos Frau follows John Eraser through now. I believe he's just been passed for P14. We'll see if the score leaderboard updates. I believe he has. So is he going to look down the outside, maybe try and get the switch back through turn 5, maybe set it up for the outside of turn 6 and try and get that run down the straight? It seems like these cars do struggle a little bit crossing over the dirty air. You know, you can take the alternative line following another car. We see Frau really struggling on the power there. It's going to be really vulnerable here, coming down into the heavy braking zone in turn 7 as we see Phillips trying to have a go at the inside. Will he make it in the RPMS SimSport car? I think Frau might have just got a head flash on the lights there. Maybe Phillips not too happy with the way Frau defended that. Maybe going a bit too deep though on himself.
Yeah, slightly strange from the camera angle. We did get a very zoomed in angle of the apex of the turn, so not really sure what happened, although a flash of the lights once you've, failed a move normally signals some kind of displeasurement to the other driver, although we'll see if anything comes of that in the stewards' reports. If contact was made, they will be the ones that know for 100%, although Richard Phillips looking to try and gain if he can on the back of Frau. We've seen where he's weak last time out, coming onto the back straight. We saw Frau a couple of laps ago struggling through that big sideways moment when he was side by side, but it doesn't seem like these cars, like you say, they don't like the crossover in the dirty air. It seems like it kind of maybe even stalls the air out, so you just lose all grip. We see people attempting switchbacks and they're not quite as effective as you think they'd be. And Vensy Rachinov now on the back of the other RPMS SimSport car, Matt Stevens, who is of course being held by Adam Romaniuk for a few laps now. This has allowed, of course, Christoph Verstraper and Andy Boardman to kind of disappear up the road, and disappearing up the road is Jose Jimenez, now 12 seconds to the good on Andy Boardman. So an absolute dominant race. You see on the track map there on the right hand side of your screen, the little triangle, the 1-2-2 on the very right hand side of the circuit is your leader, and the 69 just behind him on the road is the next car in queue. So that's just a visual representation of how far 12 seconds truly is here at Indianapolis, as now Vensy Rachinov towards turn 12. Doesn't look like he's close enough to make a lunge on Stevens, tucks back in, maximizes that corner as much as he can to get the kind of clean drive into 13, which will of course set himself up 14. A little bit of grass on the inside there, a little bit of dust being kicked up. You can kind of afford to do it at Indy. You can exploit the inside grass that little bit, although too much, and of course you will be picked up for a cut detection. And speaking of penalties, we do have a few to read through now from the stewards. We have a incident on lap 10 turn 7 involving the 2 and the 69, which was of course racing incident, minor contact between Boardman and Verstraper. We then had lap 14 turn 1 involving the 20 and the 96, racing incident, minor contact. incident on lap 11, turn 1, involving the 23 and the 17. I believe that was 23, just trying to scan quickly down the list. Can't spot it off the top of my head. 23, drive-through for the 23, I believe Chris Downing, actually, that would be, on the 17.
Yeah, which is 17 to Carlos Frau, so it would have been that instant.
Yes, so it would be that. Well spotted, Callum. So yeah, drive through for the 23 for a takeout on the 17. Incident lap 11, turn 1, involving the 23, the 17 and the 77. A warning for the 23. The 23 has an unsafe rejoin after the incident with the 17. The 77 had to take evasive action. Incident on lap 15, turn 6, involving the 197 and the 182. A warning for the 182 for a dive bomb leading to contact position was returned, which is probably why it was a warning and not a penalty. Incident lap 15, turn 6, involving the 182 and the 256 for a racing incident, minor contact. Lap 16, turn 10, involving the 34 and the 17, racing incident, minor contact. And last one to come through, lap 16, turn 1, involving the 182 and the 197. A warning for the 197, goes too wide, causing contact, and forced the 182 off the track. So not too many penalties tonight, a couple of 5 seconds, a couple of drive-throughs being handed out here and there, but relatively clean otherwise.
Yeah, everyone been quite well behaved as we Stevens currently being put under pressure by Rachanov into turn 1. Stevens still holding that P5 quite impressively. Romaniuk and Verstappen is another point to note as we see the cars wind through turn 3 and into turn 4. Nothing going there for Rachanov. Verstappen currently 2 seconds off the back of Boardman, so he's opened up that gap a little bit, looking a bit more comfortable in P2. We're not seeing those sort of groups of sort of trains of 4, 5, 6 cars. It seems to be that these guys are sort of spreading off and sprinting off at the front, and you've got that big gaggle of the midfield as I see a yellow flag and the car 256 stopped on the track map. Who's that? That's Nico Kumpu, I believe, stopped in turn 4 as we see this battle continuing down on the main straight into turn 7 of Rachanov trying to find a way past Stevens. Nico Kumpu there, dropping down the order. It's currently settling down P18 now, so I wonder if we can see a little bit of what happens. Sorry, P20 now showing up as we see a replay loading up of a little tap there on the wall from the car behind chasing Kumpu. I don't know who that is off the top of my head.
I think it's Ethan, Scotty and Marquez possibly there.
It was Marquez with the tip to the wall.
Marquez to the outside. Kumpu on the inside into turn 1. Marquez just about makes it stick up the inside into 2. Nico Kumpu there on the outside, the less favourable line. Ethan Scotty having to go towards the outside line for turn 3, and he dives up the inside into 4. Marquez maybe not quite expecting that move to be made. Unfortunately, Nico was kind of turned sideways, and then of course once you get turned in pack racing, you have to wait for the field to go by, and it just feels like forever before you can get going again. So possibly not the greatest thing to happen, but of course a very nice recovery from Nico Kumpu to not affect anybody else. Of course your driver's instinct kind of tells you to slam the throttle and try and get going as quickly as you can to minimize any loss, although Nico waiting very patiently for his time to come and then reversed off the inside line towards the outside before getting going again. So although down in P20 now, he will still score some points because of course the top 30 do get points here in the Super Trofeo Cup, although hats off to you, Nico Kumpu, for keeping it clean.
Yeah, rather interesting point to note as well, something from I've seen from real life racing is a lot of, especially Formula cars, don't generically have a reverse gear that will work every time. Reverse is sort of just thrown into the box because it's a legal requirement, and as you take the box apart, if the stewards ever check it, they will see that there is a reverse gear in there. But whether it engages necessarily is often down to luck, clutch position, exact revs, biting point, all these sorts of little things that are quite hard to control in some race cars. So you'll find that actually these cars can find it in real life quite tricky to get into reverse. So obviously not simulated in the game as Kumpu decides to reverse off the racing line and away. Very, very smart bit of driving there from Nico to allow him to get going soon. Rather quickly, sorry, as I fumble my words there. As we see Rachanov backing out onto the straight and still trying to get past Stevens. These three look like they're going to be the fight for P4 as Rachanov going down the inside on Stevens. Will Stevens hold it around the outside? He's gone in quite deep there as we nearly go 3 wide. Rachanov having to check up before making contact with Romaniuk. So quite heavy there from Rachanov. Maybe a bit too late on the brakes, trying a bit too hard to get past Stevens there. And he's sort of cost himself a little bit of time there in getting past. Only 13 minutes now as we've just ticked over to find a way past Stevens and then have a go at Romagnon for P4.
Yeah, that's the one. Down into turn one. It seems to be very tricky to get these cars kind of brought up once you do slam on the brakes, of course, with the kind of double slipstream you'd be getting from the cars ahead, carrying a lot more speed than you once were in qualifying and practice on your own. And of course, having to find that magic braking marker. And if you overshoot it, that's exactly what happens as you begin to turn to try and make the corner. Of course, ABS in these cars will try and stop the wheels from locking, which will, of course, reduce braking pressure and make it very tricky to get the car then stopped. Yeah, just as Ryan Gill says tonight is, oh look, he does exist, Jose Jimenez, nearly 11 seconds to the good on your next car in the queue. Andy Boardman, who has closed up a little bit, it was nearly up into the 12-second mark as Jimenez crosses the line with a 1:38.935 last time by. Looks like he's dialed off the pace a little bit because Andy Boardman's lap last time by was a 1:38, should I say, 0.8. It's now a 1:39.1. So tyres dropping off as we expected, Callum, in the latter half of this race with just, like I say, just under 12 minutes to go. And Jimenez has driven a very commanding race, has kept himself way out of all the troubles in turn one and ensuing corners, and it's just leaps and bounds, literally just driven away from the field once again. Carlos Frau now sizing up a move on the back of John Aracer down into turn one, pulls out of the slipstream a little bit to try and get a better view on the corner ahead, maybe to try and reduce that slipstream effect, just so he's not carrying so much more speed into turn one that he has to break that much earlier than the car ahead. A little bit of grass on the inside, going to upset the car, and John Aracer just kind of pulls away with Luke Crofts just ahead. No real gain from Richard Phillips behind, although a driver that we have seen commandeer the top end of the leaderboard in the GT3s, namely with the Mercedes GT3 Evo, the German Masters. I remember Richard Phillips very far up into the top 10, and the One Make Series maybe just struggling that little bit with the different aero package we've got here on the Super Trofeo 2 cars, although this is, I was told last week, which I didn't realise, a base for the Huracan Evo 2 that is to come. Of course, with the roof scoop has been minimised that a little bit more, and of course the shark fin on the back is a little bit shorter, and Ryan Gill mentions in my ears that you of course can watch it at Daytona this weekend, where the Iron Lynx team fields 3 cars of the Evo 2 variant. So if you're curious to know what it looks like in real life, I think it looks very good. Be sure to take your eyes over to IMSA TV, where you could, of course, watch anything outside of the US. It is region locked, I believe, so if you are in the US, you will have to find who is providing your coverage for you on the IMSA website. But new formats of GTDs and GTPs to follow there. Super exciting stuff, so do tune yourself in, and if you want to talk about it at all, of course, you can head on over to the RCI Discord, where we have many channels for chatting amongst the IRL motorsport events. Of course, no spoilers if you can help it, because some drivers, shall we say, some members of the Discord might be watching it at a later date. And down into turn one now, Richard Phillips looks that little bit closer to the back of Carlos Frau as they round through 2, although it seems running into the back of Carlos Frau as pictures have currently frozen that we're watching, and it now catches up. I think Discord had a little bit of a blip there with Ryan Gill as Richard Phillips down the inside into Luke Crofts, into Carlos Frau on the outside. A very detrimental move there. Stewart's going to be casting their eye over that one, and you could just hear the slaps of the foreheads from next door on the stewards.
Oh dear, Richard Phillips, that's not a move that's covered him in glory there. I was going to say, as you were mentioning about the new GT3 Evo 2 variant of the Huracan, I've actually seen the car test at Donington. I believe I was on a engine shakedown test with our Unis Praga R1, and they had one of these new cars. It was actually some bolt-on aero components onto a original Huracan GT3. And you could tell the new aero components quite nicely, because they had the original livery on the GT3, and then all of the additional new components, the shark fin, The updated front bumper, rear bumper, side skirts were all in a lovely, just gloss carbon, looking very, very good. So I imagine maybe that's looking to run in British GT. Didn't manage to have a chat with the owners due to being a bit busy that day, as we see John O'Racer rounding out the final corner of turn 14, coming down the back straight. Gonna try and have a go at Les Stevenson, maybe trying to get back after that. It seems like he's the one that fared the best out of all that contact. Carlos Fowl decided to have with him and Richard Phillips. So it looks like he's going to have a go at Les Stevenson going down through turn 4, maybe just trying to upset him off the line there. He's forced him a little bit off the apex, might be able to give him a run down into turn 5. Nothing doing there. He's going very, very deep though. Running across the marbles there, so not a lot of grip out there. That wide in turn 5 as some dust gets kicked up by Les Stevenson, taking a little bit of grass as John O'Racer maximising the track all the way out to the grass onto the back straight to try and give as best of a run as possible. As Scotty and Marquez still battling as they have been all race long now. 7 minutes to go. I wonder which one of these two is going to win for P7. It seems to be on their own a little bit, having a nice little battle coming through the turn 12 into turn 13. Through turn 11 into 12, 13 and 14 now. Is he going to set him up for a move on the turn 1 after the main straight, John?
Yeah, I'd say certainly close enough to the back of Marquez to maybe have a go, although time is running out, just under 7 minutes to go. And just casting yourself back to the Lamborghini point you made, it's great to see, of course, the new aero components in that glossy carbon. You can really tell what's changed, whereas when, of course, the likes of me see it, the Joe Public, we will see it fully liveried up, and we'll have to be picking out details from afar on a TV cam, of course. But moving on to another point, something else new for 2023, other than the Evo 2 Hurricane, is RCI goes iRacing. And so for those of you interested in these events, we have a Road Series open with a multi-class grid consisting of GT4 and MX5 cars. The same format, of course, follows an endurance race at Okayama as well on the 11th of February, with the Road Series beginning on the 31st of January. So for those of you that love to drive around in circles only turning left, no right turns like we're doing here, we do of course have a Charlotte 75, 50 laps around Charlotte Motor Speedway in the street stock series. So if you want to turn left only for 50 laps, then sign up for that one. And of course, if you're new to iRacing, you've not yet dipped your toe in the water, head on over to our Discord, while Vency Rachelov comes under fire from Matt Stevens into turn 12 before 13, something I wasn't really expecting to see, casting my eyes down at the TV camera pictures. But Rachelov fending off that one well, tries to maximise his run through 14 to drag away from the back of Stevens as they get very close to the wall, as always on the oval. But of course, if you are new to the iRacing sim, we do have a 3-month free trial for new accounts only over on our Discord channel. Perfect to test if iRacing is the sim for you. And alternatively, we do have 12 months for $49.99 USD for new accounts only. Again, ideal if you want to take part in all of our events over the next year. And you can find full details on how to claim this over in our Discord server. Link is of course in the description below. Head on over and grab yourself some bonus codes if you want to. And of course, if you do want to sign up and pre-qualify for any of the events that we mentioned tonight, whether it be iRacing, ACC, or our super exciting esports event, you can head on over to racerci.com, where you will of course be greeted at the top of the list with our esports 6-hour RCI challenge series, where we have 5 rounds, 50 teams, limited tire sets, a custom BOP, and a targeted, so basically minimum, €8,000 prize pool. The series aims to showcase the absolute best of what sim racing has to offer on Assetto Corsa Competizione. And in case you missed a couple of weeks ago on Friday's broadcast, it was confirmed by Ryan Gill that one of our partners, Fanatec, will be running a giveaway alongside the official broadcast. More of that to be revealed later on. And alongside the esports series, if you don't fancy, splitting with your hard-earned cash and you want to race for fun, get a few friends together, pick a car and follow the same format with no prize pool exchanging hands, there is of course a free version of that series on the website as well, which again you can pre-qualify for anytime, day or night, by heading on over to racerci.com. As Venti Racionov finds himself getting close now to the back of Adam Romaniuk. We did see Romaniuk struggle a little bit through the first couple of sectors, so if Racionov is going to make a move, it's going to be somewhere around here, but Romaniuk putting up a great defence. We see these Lambos now sliding out from underneath their pilots. Romaniuk working the wheel ahead, and we ride on board with Venti Racionov, who of course you can see all of his wheel inputs on the left hand side of the screen. Romaniuk goes a little bit wide and takes almost a double apex line through turn 6, whereas Racionov takes the very tight line through 6, makes it one corner essentially rather than 2 apexes, and then running out onto the back straight. You see Romaniuk just gets much better drive out onto the back straightaway as Venti Racionov now slams on the brakes for turn 8, hops over the inside curve for Romaniuk, taking that much more left line to try and straight line these next 2 corners as much as he can, using that little bit of inside grass, sizes up a move maybe into 11, makes Romaniuk think twice about turning it in on him as they run towards turn 12. 2 minutes to go, just over. I think it looks like the track map. Jose Jimenez just beginning his next lap now, so he of course does have another 2 in the bag. So Racionov with 2 laps after this one to see if he can pick off Adam Romaniuk to boost himself up the championship and a much better comeback than the start he had.
Talking about coming back from a poor start, we see Racionov. Oh, he's clouted the wall. That's definitely going to be some damage. That's a big hit. Racionov has obviously got past Stevens off camera that we've seen. Verstappen up against Boardman has closed up that gap. I don't know if Boardman's suffered some kind of mistake or has got any form of damage there. As he's going around the outside into turn 1, coming through turn 2 now, following that throw. I think Racionov's through. Yes, so Racionov, who battled for a solid 20-30 minutes to try and get past Boardman, had backed off 2 or 3 seconds. Sorry, Verstappen, as I've been corrected by Rango, had backed off 2 or 3 seconds and has now finally got past into turn 1. John.
Yeah, so he's been sizing up the move for a while. Turn 1, we see there Verstappen dart to the outside of Boardman. Boardman's line then becomes very shallow. Verstappen just about gets a nose in on turn 2, and Boardman probably thought, how the hell has he done that one? As he comes around turn 3 into 4, seals the move very nicely indeed. Very close racing between these two. We've seen it between 20 minutes, like you say, Callum. Nothing really happening. Then all of a sudden you've got a Belgium alongside you, fired up in a Lamborghini, and this has really thrown Boardman off his stride. As you now see Verstappen open up the gap between the number 69 greased Weasel racing car behind him, very much so, after sitting behind him for a good few laps. Definitely made a move stick there brilliantly, and Gil's telling me in my ear Verstappen could try and now go for the fastest lap. Of course, Jimenez has claimed the fastest lap with clean air, so there's no kind of slipstream in the fact of, Jimenez has had a much better run down the straight that has begun his lap, so all to play for. This kind of becomes now like a qualifying session as these boys now begin their last lap, and you see in the background Racionov still behind Adam Romaniuk, still no move to be had there, and down into turn 1, Andy Boardman certainly not close enough to make a move stick on Verstappen, not even try. I think Boardman's definitely kind of said, you know what, it's yours, fair play, have it, I'm going to secure a 3rd in the bag and net myself some good championship points. And looking to
see Verstappen with a 15-second penalty for causing a collision. I believe that has come through turn 2 to Verstappen, car number 2 on lap 28, turn 15. Car number 2 takes out the car number 69, position return. So that's what caused the gap to close up between Boardman and Verstappen, and it's allowed Jimenez to stretch out the lead to 19 seconds. There was an incident not seen on our cameras as we were following, I presume, a different battle. So going into turn 15, so that would have been one of the final corners, I'd imagine. Maybe contact on the exit down onto the straight, as we see Jose Jimenez coming to round off a very, very dominant 50 minutes of Indianapolis road course here, as he rounds the final corner to take a 20.5 second lead. Jose Jimenez is your winner for round number 3 here at Indy, as we see Verstappen still battling through the last couple of corners with Boardman. These guys will still want to finish ahead on track if they can. Obviously Verstappen is going to lose a load of time, probably down to P6, P7 with that penalty now, as Boardman tries to hang it around the outside of Verstappen. I don't think he's going to get it coming up towards the line, and Romaniuk is going to hold on for P4 on the road, maybe just off Racionov. very, very close to over the line. 0.034 of a second there, and that was a amazing run there. Obviously, Boardman will be promoted into P2, Romaniuk P3, and Rachanov is now P4 as the scoreboards start to settle themselves. Actually, I think Verstappen leaves out of pure frustration. Stevens is in P5 and Marquez P6. Scotty is P7 with a 5-second penalty, with Daly behind in P8. Lopez Garcia in P9 and Les Stevenson rounds out the top 10 as we see Jimenez on his victory parade lap.
Yeah, certainly some rotten luck there from Verstappen on the penalty right at the end there, just as he thought he'd sealed the move on Andy Boardman. The stewards kick in with a penalty. Do have a couple to run through just before we get to your scoreboard at the end. Incident on lap 21, turn 1, involving the 182 and the 256. We have a racing incident. Lap 21, turn 3, involving the 182 and the 256. No further action. 256 attempted a dive bomb, made contact with the 182, spun himself out. I believe that was Nico Kumpu that we saw on that one. Incident lap 25, turn 2, the 46 and the 53, racing incident, minor contact. Incident lap 23, turn 4, involving the 197 and the 34. 5 seconds for the 34, overtake with excessive contact on the 197. The 34 hits the 197 in the rear and takes the position. Lap 25, turn 6, involving the 25 and the 22. 15 seconds for the car 22. The 22 took out the 25, but then did return the position. Lap 25, turn 6, involving the 25 and the 22. Again, a warning for the number 25. And incident on lap 28, turn 13, involving the 69 and the 2 was a racing incident. And then lap 28, turn 15, some 2 corners later, the 69 and the 2 was a 15 seconds for car number 2, Christoph Verstappen, who took out the 69. Position was returned, though, in Christoph's favour. Incident on lap 30, involving the 69 and the 2, once again, racing incident, minor contact. And this is how everybody finished tonight at Indianapolis. Dominating lead from Jose Jimenez to take the victory some 22 seconds down the road from Andy Boardman. Adam Romaniuk comes in P3. Venti Rachanov after a little comeback in P4. Matt Stevens, surprise of the night, in P5. Marquez P6. Verstappen, after that penalty served, finds himself back in P7, so where he started on the grid. So, you know, it could have been better. It could have been certainly a lot worse. Ethan Scotty P8, Jordan Daly P9, Lopez Garcia P10. Very own RCI Les Stevenson at P11, John Eraser P12, Tom Shipston P13, Matthew Kingston Lee P14, Carlos Frau P15, Daniel Crimson P16, Nico Kumpu after a spin late in the race P17, Matthias Thornberg P18, Luke Crofts went backwards from the start, down in P19, very unfortunate there, Daniel Martinez P20, Cal in P21, Richard Phillips after a little bit of contact in P22, Fukushio P23, and Roscam P24. Tom Roberts, unfortunately, our very own RCI staff member, didn't finish, and Chris Downing as well did not finish. And Tom Roberts in the chat said 45 minutes of near enough nose-to-tail racing, finally force an error and make the pass 2 corners later, and his PC dies again. Lets him down every time he needs it, so possibly time to invest in some new components there, Tom. Very unfortunate when, of course, hardware failure does happen. It is, of course, out of the driver's hands, and it's just, you know, I kind of akin it almost to a mechanical failure in real life, Callum.
Yeah, mechanical failure is obviously extremely frustrating in racing. Trying to think of any instance apart from running cars out of fuel. A few of the university cars having incidents in the past, and it can cause massive heartache. Obviously, a PC dying is not fun. Hopefully, he can get that fixed in time for next week. Or he can, I feel like probably another shill coming on from John, and use one of our sponsors to find some form of new solution for his PC.
AK Informatica.
It's like a quiet shill. I don't know who that will be. I don't know. Maybe Tom can look on their website to find some new PC components. As I'll allow John to shill his life away, as I'm not yet accustomed to it.
Yeah, certainly. So it's that time of the broadcast where, of course, we shill for, of course, our partners, AK Informatica, for providing our server solutions here at RCI. However, they also do provide high-end hardware, peripherals, and accessories, including sim gear. So if you are in their target market across the pond, I believe in Europe, Italy, they serve mainly, then be sure to check them out. Driver61.com. You can, of course, get 25% off your driver coaching by using our discount code with a link in the description below and heading on over to driver61.com. And lastly, Fanatec, your one-stop shop for the best sim racing equipment on the market. You can, of course, use our affiliate link in the description below, and it won't cost you a single penny. However, it does help us here with the running costs at RCI. And of course, head on over to any of our socials at any time you feel free to. If you want to see what we're up to in the background, we do post regular esports events that we compete in. We post progress from them, drivers coming in and out of the car, where we're residing, what we're racing in, where you can find us to check us out. So we do, of course, have Discord, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And of course, remember to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel, where, of course, without you guys, none of this would be possible and would be worthwhile doing. Without you boys sat at home, and girls, of course, watching on as the chaos ensues in our one-make championships, the close battles, of course, in our Fridays championships that we are streaming Monday and Friday here on RCI TV. And on our website, of course, we do have a ton of new events, including a lot of iRacing championships. So if you do want to become a part of those and, you know, be maybe one of the pioneers for RCI and iRacing and pave the way as we branch out into other communities, you can, of course, head on over to our Discord, where you can find exclusive discount codes for new accounts only if you do want to take part in anything that catches your fancy. But of course, another great race here at Indianapolis. Jose Jimenez with a dominant drive away from the field and battles up and down the grid, certainly keeping the championship well alive and thriving here in the Super Trofeo Cup. We will be heading over to Brands Hatch for our next round, and of course our next stream here on RCI TV will be Friday for our GT Sprint Challenge, where we head to Paul Ricard for 65 minutes of racing with a mandatory pit stop. Dylan Tan looking very dominant over there, so if you want to check out how he's doing, check out Hugo Merles and Jonathan Seville, who managed to find their way into the top three in their championship fight as well. Then be sure to check that out. But from myself, John Dalton, from Callum Kerwin alongside me, from Ryan Gill behind the cameras, and from all of the stewards that have taken time out of their evening to judge your driving, thank you very much for tuning in. We will see you on Friday for the RCI GT Sprint Challenge. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the week and take care of yourselves.